Okay, everyone, this is a webinar relevant to these two qualifications, as you can see on the screen, the Advanced Diploma in Strategic People Management and the Advanced Diploma in Strategic Learning and Development. The focus of this webinar today is what we call Unit 3, so 7CO03, Personal Effectiveness, Ethics and Business Acumen. And what we will cover over the course of the next few minutes or so is a brief overview of the unit, and then more importantly, the assessment brief and some of the key bits of information there. So the agenda for this particular webinar. First of all, I will explore the purpose of the unit as a whole and how it links in with professional development, specifically related to your progress as a human resource management practitioner. We will think about the elements of assessment for this particular unit, noting here that there are 3 different elements of assessment. 2 of these are what we call formative. In other words, they don't count towards your final mark. And 1 of them is summative. In other words, that is the piece that contributes your final grade for this unit. We will think in some detail about how these 3 elements of assessment link together, and importantly, how the formative assessment tasks, so those tasks that do not count towards the final grade, inform the final submission. So how it all links together as a whole. And I'll give you some top tips and advice as we go. So what do we know about this unit? This unit is all about the development of skills and behaviours that underpin people professionals at work. We draw heavily here, of course, from the CIPD's profession map, and we focus on a number of different factors, as you can see there on the screen. Issues such as inclusivity, how HRM informs business outcomes, our own personal commitment to continuous learning, how we influence and persuade others, amongst another different points there as well. So this unit does run for longer in terms of time than other units on this particular qualification. And the reason for that is that we need to provide a space where you can evidence the development of your behaviours and skills. So there's a start, there's a midpoint, and there's an end with the elements of assessment that we'll talk through in a few moments' time. It's just important to understand there that this particular unit does extend over that longer period, purely because it's a developmental unit, so we need to provide that space where you can actually show the learning and development that you have undertaken. So building on that, what are these assessment elements? So we have 3 tasks, as I mentioned earlier on. 2 of these are what we call formative, so they are not assessed, and 1 of these is summative. In other words, it contributes to your final grade for the unit. Task number 1 is formative. So this is the start point of the unit. This is where you will undertake a self-assessment activity against a different assessment criterion, and you will identify your developmental goals against each of those assessment criteria in the form of what we call a continuing professional development plan. So you will set out a particular plan for yourself against these assessment criteria, rating where you are at the moment in terms of your skills, thinking about the activities you might be able to engage with to develop your professional skills and behaviours, and what sort of obstacles and opportunities you might be able to take advantage of as well. So this particular task here, your tutor will review it and will provide feedback to you, but it is not formally assessed. So a mark will not be provided for this task. It then informs the others. Because of course, on a continuous professional development journey, there always needs to be that initial element of, well, where are we starting from? Where are we moving from in this journey? The second task is also what we call formative. So this again will not link to your final grade for the unit, but it is the sort of the learning journey, as it were. So in task 1, you undertake your starting point for the assessment. So where are you at the moment with these particular assessment criteria? Where are your skills and behaviours right now? What are you planning to do? And in task 2, you will produce a learning journal over the course of the unit for 6 of these assessment criteria, which are nominated in advance. And you will then begin to build your evidence and your plan, etc., for the activities you've engaged with and how this has contributed to your professional skill and behaviour development. Again, your tutor will provide you with feedback on this particular task, but they will not mark it. So it will again not form part of the final mark for the unit, but it is of course important to engage with this task fully because it provides you with the evidence that you will need within the final task, task number 3. So task 3 is the sort of end point of this particular unit, and it's the part of the assessment that contributes to your grade. So it's what we call summative. Here you are then going to conduct an evaluation of your competence against those 6 assessment criteria that are nominated to you, and you will identify how you have built your skills and behaviours over the course of the unit, where your new level of competence is, providing evidence from your learning journal developed in task 2 to support your assertions here. What you will then also do within this task is provide a new professional development plan. So this will indicate how you will build on your skills and behaviours that you've developed through the course of the unit, and how you will take those off into the next part of your professional career. This is again because continuous professional development does not start and stop. It is a continuous process. So we want to see how you're going to build and expand upon the skills and behaviours that you have developed thus far. As this is a summative part of the assessment, your tutor will indeed mark this. They will provide you with a grade and they will provide you with formal feedback on this work. So this is the element here that contributes to your grade for this particular unit. So to give you a little bit more advice about the formative assessment tasks here. So the purpose of tasks 1 and 2 is to really help you to understand where you are at the moment, first of all, in terms of your professional skills and behaviours, and then to understand how you've grown and developed those skills and behaviours over time. So because this is an integrative activity, it is not possible to complete task 3, the assessment of these skills and behaviours, without having done tasks 1 and 2 first of all. This is why your tutor will provide you with feedback on tasks 1 and 2, and then that will lead you into the completion of task 3 as you go. So of course, as I say there, your tutor will provide you with feedback, but not necessarily a grade for this, of course. Something that you may wish to do, and this is not compulsory by any means, but it can be very useful indeed, is to form what we call action learning sets or peer dialogue groups with other members of your cohort to sort of act as critical friends to one another in the production of your portfolios. This is not to say, of course, that you would work together as a group work activity. No, this is an individual portion of assessment. But it is always a good idea to chat with one another about the challenges and opportunities that you face, potential opportunities you could take advantage of, things in your job that you're thinking about how to develop, etc. So acting as critical friends to one another can be a very, very good idea indeed. What you will find is that your centres will set you deadlines for task 1, 2, and of course task 3. So of course, make sure that you add these to your diaries, that you meet these deadlines in practice, and that you liaise with your tutors if there are any particular issues to do with that. But as I've said already a few times during this webinar, tasks 1 and 2 don't count your final mark for this particular unit. Your unit mark is determined solely on the basis of your response to task number 3, and that is what you will submit to your particular centre for grading for the purposes of assessment for this unit. So what do we know about task 3, the summative assessment here? So obviously this requires the production of what we'll call a portfolio here, where you rate your new level of competence with the skill or behaviour that you've been asked to explore, and then you will provide evidence to support your evaluation. So you will highlight your new level of competence and why you think that you've developed your skills in that particular area. You will link to elements of evidence from your portfolio that you produced during task 2, and then you will produce a new continuing professional development plan showing how you will continue to build on the skills and behaviours that you've developed within this particular unit and assessment. In terms of the length of this assessment, it's again similar to other units. You have up to 4,000 words and there is a 10% margin on that. So somewhere between 3,600 and 4,400 words overall, which gives you somewhere in the region of 600 to 650 words per assessment criteria there. Now, your evidence, of course, does not have to be presented within that 4,000 word limit. Generally, what individuals will do is they'll have their narrative portfolio highlighting their new level of competence, a justification for this, etc., and then link out to evidence that is presented in a series of appendices which fall outside of the word count. So your evidence can be placed into appendices. This does not have to fall within the 4,000 word limit for the portfolio, of course. And there are a good deal of pieces of advice available from the CIPD related to this particular unit, and a number of templates that you may wish to use. So in the learner assessment briefing documentation, you will see that appendices B, C and D are relevant to tasks 1, 2 and 3 respectively. So you may wish to use those or a variation of those as you produce these particular pieces of assessment. These can, of course, be downloaded from the Learner portal from the CIPD. And my main piece of advice here is that you should be working consistently over time on this unit. This is not something that you can leave everything to the end and just produce the Task 3 portfolio and submit that for assessment. This unit will require that you undertake that initial scoping activity to assess where you are in terms of your professional skills and behaviours. You undertake then that learning process, the learning journey. You're producing your learning logs over time, developing your evidence of the activities you've engaged with, the tasks that have helped you to develop your professional skills and behaviours. And then you'll be in a place to develop task 3, where you assess your new level of competence against the nominated assessment criteria, linking out to the evidence that you've then placed in your learning journal from task 2. So working consistently over time, maybe dropping a reminder in your calendar every week to spend a bit of time reflecting on activities you've engaged with, opportunities you've taken advantage of, etc. Challenges indeed that you've had to overcome. That can be a really good idea to then just put a bit of time each week into this unit, and then it will build upon itself over time. Top tips for task 3. So what we would like you to do here is to be really clear with the activities that you've engaged with. So what happened? Why was it important? How did that activity contribute to your professional development? So if you're claiming that your competence has grown in a particular professional area, what have you done, and how has that development activity you've engaged with specifically helped you to evidence a high level of competence in this skill or behaviour? When you're providing a justification for this and talking about the new levels of skills and behaviours you've developed, you must link very clearly both to your evidence portfolio and to academic literature or theory. So references are needed in the portfolio, and again, this is important that you show that you've linked to academic journals and textbooks, CIPD fact sheets and websites, etc., as relevant to your particular portfolio. So link, yes, to the evidence base you produced in your learning journey, and then academic literature too. Please don't forget to include that forward-looking CPD plan. So learning, as we say, is always a continuous process. It doesn't start and stop, although obviously we may have assessment points along the way. So as you reach the end of your task 3, production of your final portfolio, think about what's next for you. How will you continue to develop your skills and professional behaviours in such a way that you will then be able to take your career to the next level in time? And do finally make sure that your documentation is clear. So make sure that it is navigable. If you have multiple appendices, and you may well do if you're linking to various different pieces of evidence, make sure that there is an index that is clearly navigable for the reader so that individuals can make their way through your portfolio in a logical format. So please do make sure that any documentation you provide is clearly evidenced, clearly linked, and there is a guide to the portfolio in the end. The marking criteria are listed on the screen here. Now, I will not go through these in full detail now, aside to say that these marking criteria are provided within the Learner Assessment Guide. Your centre will discuss these in detail as to what will count as a distinction of merit, a pass, and unfortunately instances where work will need further work in order to reach that passing threshold. But again, in each of these boxes, it's important to see that there is a narrative in each of the categories there. And you can have a read of this before you start your work, of course, and as you go through, just sense checking yourself as to whether you're meeting the criteria for the level of work that you're attempting to produce here. So this is hopefully a useful table in terms of guiding your work and your studies within this particular unit here. So a final few top tips in terms of your summative assessment. So when your centres are marking your work, they're looking for a number of things. So they're looking for your ability to engage with reflective learning. So not just to say the events and the types of opportunities that you've engaged with, but to really think about how a particular event or opportunity has helped you to develop your skills. So your portfolio in task 3 should not simply be just a list of the things that you have done. It should be a narrative around drawing out the key elements of learning, the key elements of professional development, how something that you have done has contributed to your development as a people practitioner. Alongside that, do make sure that you link to clear elements of evidence to support your claims. This is obviously important. And as I said on the previous one of the previous slides as well, linking to academic theory is also important in terms of providing a justification there too. Make sure you provide that post-unit CPD plan as well, demonstrating to your assessor how you will continue your professional skill and behaviour development. And again, clear presentation. The CIPD templates are very useful indeed. You can certainly use those to help structure your work. And obviously, do make sure that you take advice from your centre on your task 3 submission in particular. So I hope that that particular webinar has been useful for you for task 3, helped you to understand the different elements of assessment for this particular unit, our intent and the purpose behind each of these, and that we've highlighted some top tips and things to think about as you're producing your work for this unit. So thank you for your time and all the very best with your studies. Thank you.